Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 2022 season kickoff event. Celebrate 60, let the season begin. And begin it does in 10 days. Given that, we're especially grateful that Executive Director Tim Jennings, Artistic Director Tim Carroll, TC, are able to join us. Ian Joseph as well will be joining us. And Ian, for those of you who don't know, is the incoming chair of the board of directors. So we'll do a proper introduction to Ian at the time. But first, I want to ask TC to discuss the upcoming season. And now for a lot of you, new members, I know that we attracted a lot of new members last year. This is the first time that you've seen TC. He's promised to tell some of his old jokes, but luckily we've only got a certain amount of time. So we may be spared some of the worst. Anyway, without further ado, TC, over to you. And I think we had a question, and I just want to quickly talk about that. Sorry, TC, and then we'll move on. Please take advantage of the fact that we've got the two Tims in front of us at the moment to ask questions, make observations. If you think of something after the event, including those of you who will watch the recorded version of this, please send them to me and I will reach out to the two Tims and Ian and get their responses and then collate those and send them back to you all. Anyway, we have a really fantastic year to look forward to. Very busy year, complex. I think by my calculation, something like 700 performances over the year. And I think, it's going to be a fantastic way to celebrate not only Sure's 60th season, the 60th year of volunteers being involved as a support to Sure. So, TC, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's very nice to see you, and nice to be saying hello to the Guild, our beloved Guild.
So, Cheryl, we had a question, and I thought it was probably a good one to start the session, the one from Susan, because it kind of encapsulates what we might get from this season from an artistic perspective, TC. I mean, it's a real rich season, as have seasons past been, but this in particular, the number of shows, number of performances, and so on. So what would we take away from this season?
Gosh, I think my answer is probably a little bit of a cheat, because I suspect my answer is I'd like people to take away a kind of sense of all the different things theatre can be. That we occasionally get a bit stuck in what we think theatre is, and we say, oh, that's not theatre, or that's not what the Shore is doing. But actually, a season like this shows that while we can always do and will always do those classic plays which have made our reputation, we also are striking out in so many new directions and so many new definitions of theatre, with the kinds of outdoor events and puppet shows, and some of the plays we're doing are pretty unusual this year, like Everybody is a very unusual sort of play. So I think I'd like people to take away that, because I think where we're going in the next few years is, again, not away from what we've been doing, but adding more dimensions to it and adding more opportunities for a wider audience to come to us, but also for the audience we already have to have a wider experience.
And talking of opportunities, there seem to be more either current members of the company or alumni that are in sort of directorial roles. I think about half the shows have got Sure directors directing them, including yourself, obviously. So
yes, I'm only doing one this year because we have so many interesting people to find room for. I think it's really important to develop ourselves as people. There's an ethical side to theatre and as an activity, which by which I don't mean that theatre is a very sort of moral occupation and it's our job to put on plays that make the world better and so on. I'm not sure I do think that, really, and I'm not sure I agree with Shaw in thinking that plays make the world better. What I do think is that watching plays and making plays makes us better. we become better people by doing it, and better not just in a moral sense, but just richer, and gives us more of an experience of life, which is a rather pompous way of saying that the reason I love this job is because one is always trying to become more the person you could be. And the real joy for me of this job is that I get to help other people do that too. So when I have actors who say to me, I'd love to try directing, or I used to do some directing and I'd love to go back to it and have another go, like Sanjay, it's kind of marvelous to be able to say, all right, I think you're a very remarkable person. I think you have incredible talent and a marvelous heart. So let's invest in you as an artist and see what else you have.
I'd like to see it looking at the requirements that this will put on the Guild in terms of the number of plays and performances and the like. But I was struck by looking at the days in June and July where you've got sort of weekdays, you've got up to 5 shows on in a weekday, and at the weekends you've got some days when there are 6 shows going. That must have taken a lot of complex planning, never mind from the artistic side. And I don't know how Jeff Cummings reacted to this very ambitious season.
Jeff loves me, of course, because I make his life endlessly interesting and rewarding. Yeah, it's a sort of running joke between us that I just bring him incredible headaches and then give him sort of very elaborate praise, but no actual pay rise when he solves them.
Yeah. So I mean, and obviously that's kept you nimble as an artistic director. When you look at that, the playbill for those particular months, 5 and 6 shows going on at the same time. You must be like a traffic cop as well as an artistic director.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, for me, planning all of that is the easy bit, because you always have more ideas than you can actually do. So in a way, you could say I've just been lazy, and instead of editing down my ideas to manageable length, I've just kept them all in and made it Jeff's and everyone else's problem to give me all my desires.
For those of us joining and seeing you for the first time, TC, perhaps you can explain who Jeff Cummings is. You and I, but some other people on the broadcast won't know.
Well, you will have worked out, I think, from what Alan said, that all of these activities don't just schedule themselves. And Jeff, as head of planning, has various bits of paper and computers and programs. We now use a thing called Arts Vision, which is helping because it's a program that tells him if he has created an impossibility, which I could use one of those for when I do the casting, because sometimes one can be quite a long way down the casting and you suddenly go, oh crap, we've got him in 3 different productions. Oh, right. So that's not going to work. So yes, Jeff is head of planning and very remarkably tolerant and patient of my whims and fantasies.
So I'm surprised that we haven't had a question yet about casting. That always seems to be the one that Guild members and certain members within the Guild that ask. Anything that you can share with us at this stage?
Oh, listen, anything like that, I'm going to hand you over to Tim Jennings, because he has that sort of gravitas and authority from which all of that should come.
That's what Ian Joseph would appreciate, being a cricketer, is playing a straight bet, TC. So yep. Well, nicely done.
Yeah, well, I am an opener, so I know about a good forward defensive.
So the one that the play that you're directing, Ernest, that's kind of an interesting one. I mean, you've I mean, it's a play that's been done a number of times, a number of different ways. I mean, have you actually started work on that? How are you going to direct this, or not? I'd be interested to know. From the process perspective, again, people who are joining who are new to the Guild, maybe or new to the theatre even. I mean, that doesn't start until mid-May, but when would you actually start working on the look and feel of that production as a director?
Well, the first thing you have to do is work on the casting.
Yeah.
Actually, because our casting has to happen such a long time in advance. So normally we would have cast it in about sort of this time last year, or at least by July. This year we didn't cast until about September because we were behind with everything. And it was around about September, I guess, that Gillian Gallo, who's designing the set, first showed me some. This is fairly typical, I would say, of how it works. She would show me some pictures that she'd found online of rooms, Victorian rooms, and say, I was thinking we could go for this kind of look and world. Even before she does that, of course, we've had long conversations about, well, a long conversation about what I think about the play. Not in a sort of intellectual way, but just in a practical sense of, do you want to update it? The first thing she needs to know is, do I want to set it in London in 1895, or do I want to do something else with it? So once I'd said to her, no, London 1895 is perfect for me, thank you. Then it's a question of slightly more abstract things like, how real do you want it to look? Do you want it to look very realistic, or do you want it to have a certain degree of fantasy and wit about the design? It's interesting. There are various things one notices about audiences, and this brings Christina Podobiuk into play, who's the costume designer who makes beautiful period costumes. The three of us were talking about this, and we were struck by the fact that audiences are much more troubled by anachronism in costume than in design, than in the set. In the set, you could actually get away with all sorts of things that you would never have at that time. And people would just go, oh, didn't the set look lovely? But if you even get one hemline wrong or a cuff on a costume, it's like it's like the slaughter of the innocents or something. So we have to ask all those questions of, do we want any anachronism? Do we want to do what they do quite a lot nowadays, which is have the costumes very accurate, the set sort of abstractly Victorian, but the music from something else altogether, which again is the sort of what they call antinomy, the sort of incongruity that actually audiences kind of find quite spicy if you get it right, and sometimes just find very annoying. But so things like that are kind of interesting, and we are in that phase at the moment. We're now too far down the line to redesign the set or the costumes. They're already being built, and I think the costumes have started being made. I'm not sure. I'd be surprised if they haven't. But yes, that's all going on at the moment, and in essence, my bit of that is over. I'm now just waiting for rehearsals to start, because I know what the set's going to be and I know what the costumes are going to be. I do have to have a meeting with James Smith, who's in charge of music, and talk to him about what I want, because as anyone who saw Flush or Charlie's Aunt last year knows, or indeed Desire Under the Elms, I'm very interested in music in the theatre. I use music a lot in the theatre, and I have very strong opinions. Well, not opinions, I just have strong instincts about it because I'm an amateur musician myself.
I saw a question flash up. Cheryl, maybe you can pop it up for us again. I think it was on, how large is the ensemble this year? I mean, we've talked about it being, the number of performances and the number of shows. I mean, how large is the ensemble?
It's about our normal size. If you take 70 or so to be about normal. Of course, then it's bigger if you include our Christmas shows as well. Then that's another 30 odd people towards the end of the year as well. So it's not actually, we haven't actually expanded the number of actors very much. We just widened the range of what they do.
Are you referring to the embedded ensemble type of TC? Or
Well, that's also part of it. Is that the 10 of the actors are now at the moment on full-time contracts with us, which is an exciting development. And indeed one of those is Sanjay, whom I mentioned before. It's a good chance, having those people on a permanent contract is a good chance to use their other skills and not just their acting.
yeah, I mean, we've seen, haven't we, sort of video productions. I think Jonathan Ten had done something, and a thank you to Shaw Shaw Festival goers, patrons, and the like. That was really nicely done, was it not? I mean,
Yeah,
so that's an example of the work.
yes, that's right. And Kelly Wong has been making beautiful videos, and Marla and Christy have been doing a lot of work with the education department and in development. And Kira Sangster has been running a thing called the Shore Link, which is making a lot of great things happen for our friends, and is now going to be kind of a bit more inward looking this year, trying to link up some of our departments and make sure we have departments talking to each other, which is always a problem in a big place like this.
Mhm. Well, TC, I mean, we've spent about 15 minutes. I mean, I'd like to give Tim an opportunity to talk now. I don't know if you're able to stay with us.
Sure.
Well, good morning, Tim.
Good morning. How are you, Alan?
Fine, thank you, and thank you very much to you for joining us as well and giving us time. And for those of you on this and watching the broadcast version of this, recorded version, I should say, please a warm welcome, albeit remotely, to Tim Jennings, our executive director. So, Tim, welcome. So, 10 days to go. Yeah, namaste.
Yep. Yeah, namaste and all that good stuff. Yeah, no, that's it. You said we were doing 700 performances this year. I think that's the number of play performances that are listed in the program book, but
Right.
It's more like 900 when you add in the concerts and things. It is our largest season ever by a fair stretch. So
yeah, I mean, I was looking at it over the weekend in terms of where are resources, Shaw Guild resources, going to be required when, shifts and very sort of granular level. And then from that, obviously, you look at the gross numbers, you think that's an awful lot of performances, and that's just on the on stage performances. So you're absolutely right. So it's a phenomenal kind of season then.
yeah, well, it's our 60th anniversary, and it felt like, as TC said, he had a list of all the things he wanted to do, and I think we're doing all of them. So that seems good.
So can you position the season? I mean, obviously, I hope that as the season progresses, we can get a little bit more of both of your time. But I know you issued to the board a situational update. Maybe there's some edited highlights from that you could perhaps share, or just to say where we are in terms of ticket sales and the like, and your protocols.
Sure. Well, as you probably all know, we entered back into the reopening stages again today. So as of today, theaters can have 50% capacity audiences up to a maximum of 500 people, which is a step forward from where we were last week when we were only just allowed to rehearse and people were out of the buildings. And this starts to allow our staff to come back in. Tim's right. The wardrobe started a couple of weeks ago in building the shows, and sets and costumes and props are all working away like mad. Actually, everybody's working away like mad at this point. This is how we got here opens on the 9th in previews and February, and based on the current protocol modeling, it'll be a run at the 50% capacity mark for the space, which means we have about 75 tickets a show. So we're already quite sold towards the capacity. So if people are planning on seeing the show, they should grab what available tickets there are left soon, because there aren't going to be very many. At 75 people a show, the rooms will fill up pretty fast. What else to tell you about that? I mean, really, we were selling very, very well up till Christmas. Omicron slowed things up a bit, but it's picking back up again now that things are reopening. And we have a real goal to try to be, I wouldn't call it back to normal like 19 was, but we have an aim to sort of be in the sort of 2017, 2018 kind of numbers again, which would be good. That's down quite a bit from where our 2019 year was. But currently, in 2021, Kimberly and TC programmed what I think is the largest season in North America. We ended up doing more performances, I think, than any other theater on the continent, which is quite a feat. So that's exciting. It was over 600 performances. I'm still doing a final tally, but indoors and outdoors. And from, really the first day we were allowed to in this country. Some of our colleagues in the States got close, I think, but the one that I can sort of shout out to is the Utah Shakes, who seems to have done about 450 performances. It seems to be the largest group, but we're ahead by a fair track, as Mr. Carroll is enjoying me saying right now, I think. So anyway, and it looks like we hopefully, knock on wood, broke even. We'll see whether we get there or not. We're in the final portions of the year on working on that. I'm announcing things a little too early, but we're close. We'll know more soon. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkable achievement on many levels, and I've seen the emails floating around at the weekend about how board of directors are responding to a more detailed for you on this, a more detailed review of our situational update. There were some other things as well that caught my eye. The fact that the Academy Intensive begins fairly soon as well. So not only are we looking back to celebrate 60 years of the show, 60 years of volunteers being involved in the show, but I guess this is the looking forward portion. I don't know if either of you can talk about what the intensive is. People on this call will not know what that is, and I think they should know, because we are talking about the future, I guess, as well.
TC's world is in charge of the Academy, so I'll let him talk to that.
The intensive is something that's been going on for quite a while. Actually, it predates me, and it's as the name implies, it's a very concentrated couple of weeks of training for new company members. So one of the things that I think, going back to the days of Christopher, may he rest in peace, that we noticed here is that people didn't really have the training for the kind of repertoire we do, that because so little Shore is done anywhere else. And there are those who would say so little is done at the Shore, but they're wrong. But since we are really a very separate kind of repertoire, it is very difficult for the theatre schools actually to prepare students to do what we do. So a lot of the rhetoric that's in the plays we do, a lot of the language is very unusual for actors coming out of training, and the intensive really is a crash course. It doesn't do enough to get them ready for it, but it's a start, and we keep going through the summer with classes for those newbies so that they develop the vocal power and the intellectual power to be able to do these particular kinds of plays.
Right. There's a question from Arlene there. I see. We'll come back. There was another question as well for you, Tim, that I noticed. Sorry, Cheryl, can you put that Arlene's question again?
Arlene was asking how many new folks, TC?
Yeah, it's about 10. Yeah, about 10 or 12, something like that. Quite a surprisingly high number, given that we weren't really able to hold auditions. Yeah. But yeah, it's always important to have new blood coming in, and they always make us better, and they shake it up a little bit and come in going, well, why do you do it like that? But we would like to expand our training capacity over the next few years. I really want us to have a proper full-time course eventually.
And Tim, there was a question from thank you, TC. There was a question from Suzanne, I think, about can we make money? There we go.
Well, we're a charity, so we don't make money. We're not in it to make a profit. We don't usually break even on the run of a show on ticket sales alone ever. So even with the largest productions, 100% capacities, we wouldn't break even. So I think there's this sort of a lot of chat in the news recently about, theaters can't make it on 50% and that sort of thing. And I disagree with that thought process, because I think the charitable theater sector was incorporated to do just that it wasn't about ticket sales. It was about the relationship to the audience and the art. And we have a lot of donors who support us, who make up that difference. In fact, we did very well on donations last year on that very basis. And that support was amazing. You know, to compare the commercial theater sector and the charitable theater sector is like comparing apples and Corvettes. I mean, they're not. They seem like they're very similar, because what you guys see in the audience looks like the same kinds of shows happening, but the models on how they're built, the financial modeling is so radically different as to be completely incomprehensible. I often, when I'm teaching arts management courses, will talk about the fact that The Lion King, the single production by Disney that's been toured all over the world, has made almost $10 billion in the last 20 years, which is 3 times the amount of the largest film ever. So, you know, that's a theatrical production put out across the world in multiple tours, multiple sit downs in various places, and it's able to achieve more money in a single year than almost the entire theater sector in the charitable 800 or 900 theaters in the charitable sector. So it's just we're not in the same world. And they, you know, when they talk about Come From Away and things like that closing, they're not actually saying they can't afford to run it. What they're saying is they can't make money on it. And their job with an A quality show like that is to generate revenues for their investors, in the same way that all of you in your retirement accounts want stocks to give you money. Well, the people who invest in commercial theater are expecting quite a significant return on the properties that do well. So keeping your powder dry in a show like Come From Away makes more sense in the commercial sector, because they're only going to break even or maybe make, you know, a few dollars, as opposed to making a huge amount of bank, the sort of 100, 200, 300% they make on a normal run of that show. Very different than our model, where we're producing shows for one-offs over 1 year, not repeating them over and over again. In fact, you'll have seen TC and I actually stole some ideas from the commercial sector in bringing back shows like Christmas Carol, or repeating a musical here and there. Holiday Inn is a good example, where we've capitalized them over multiple years in order to afford to do them at all, because even 2 sold-out runs of Holiday Inn wouldn't have broken even without charitable investment. So there you go.
Can you see that from Laurie?
Yeah, I can take that. Something Tim and I talked about as soon as we got here was, wouldn't it be nice to throw open our doors occasionally and have another company come in? That was, of course, the thinking behind Why Not and the Mahabharat, which we're still hoping will happen further down the road. But in a way, that was a sort of one-off thing that came with a project, whereas we were really thinking in principle, is there a time in the season when, for example, our studio is not in use, where we could actually just host another company? And that felt like an important way of opening ourselves to outside work and feeding our own imaginations with different kinds of work by different people and getting to know new people. It also it really gives us the ability to do what I don't think we can do very well as the Shore, which is put on new plays, for example. So here's a new play by Keith Barker. It's a beautiful piece. We actually, I saw it 3 years ago whenever it was in Toronto, and just thought it was really heartfelt and lovely work, and that we'd be very proud to host it. So I called Keith Barker, who is the artistic director of Native Earth and the director of that piece and the author of that piece, and said, I think that would be a great way to start a relationship with Native Earth. Whether that relationship carries on or is just a sort of every 5 years we invite them to bring a show, and in the other years we invite other companies or whatever, you know, all of that you can extrapolate fairly easily as to see what sort of rhythm this could be the beginning of. We might one day have a visiting company every year before the season starts, or whatever, you know, that's all still up in the air. But the people involved in this are such talented people that it's a perfect example of what we talked about all those years ago, Tim and I, of wouldn't it be great to be able to say to the Shore audience, here's a company you should know about.
So learnings from others. I wonder as well over the last, well, particularly last year, did you learn more about the company, what the company members, what they can adapt to? I mean, the outdoor shows and all of that. You know, I think I said last week when I did an introduction to a meeting. I don't want to use the word that rhymes with divot, but you adapted. You know. And you must have learned something about the company members as well. They had to adapt to changing circumstances and maybe showcase talents that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. So, and then,
you know, in a way, it was kind of very vindicating last year, because you may remember this, Tim. In almost my first company meeting, I said to the company, "If you want to be useful to me, learn a musical instrument." I said, you know, I'm not in a hurry, but if in 3 years' time I don't have a job for you and you didn't learn a musical instrument, don't come crying to me about it. I'm giving you notice that you're going to need to be someone that I can use in lots of different ways. It's not going to be enough just to be an actor now. And sure enough, I knew, of course, back then, 5 years ago, I knew that COVID would happen. I had it all planned out, and I unleashed the virus at the appropriate moment to conduct the experiment. And it really did show that sorry, it's rather tasteless, sorry. It really did show that as a company, we are fitter than we used to be in our resilience. And it also showed that in some ways we're not as fit as we should be, which, you know, we all learned that.
We started talking about, it's an interesting thing, Alan, when you know, I'm going to use the word pivot just because I can. It was something we talked about a lot, Tim and I especially, about how these organizations that see themselves as big, like Shaw and Stratford, lose their nimbleness. They don't pivot well, and in fact, we talk a lot about the fact that in actual fact we're not big businesses. We're larger small businesses, but we are a small business. We're not, and you know, we should be able to pivot. We should be able to adapt, and it's something that I think Tim spent a lot of time pushing the artists on, and and by doing so we pushed everybody on. And so in fact, a lot of the things that TC was asking us to do artistically in 2017 and 18 and 19 put us in really good shape for 2021 and 2020 and 2021. We were able to pivot. We were able to move. I don't think a lot of companies had that headspace, and we did. So it's been very good to assume that there is a way to do something. It just may require extra of us, or it may require a different way to think about it. My favorite story of 21 really was when Gypsy was not able to happen. Tim said, well, we need some outdoor stages. And it really felt like the next day there were outdoor stages. I mean, it was a month and a half or something, but we went from him saying, we're going to do outdoor concerts and we're going to need this and we're going to need that, to having 3 outdoor stages attached to our 3 indoor stages. And they were built immediately, and people, you know, it wasn't easy. People were not used to working outside. Our production crews work in air conditioned theaters, and suddenly we're asking them to work in 40-degree weather. But you know, it was amazing how fast they adapted and did that, and were able to put on shows, you know. And every time we kept looking for, how do we get this in front of an audience? It doesn't matter if that audience is 50 people or 20 people or 300 people. How do we get in front of an audience? So it was a great learning, and I think it's set us up really well for 22.
I think that, you know, the fact that we not consider ourselves a big business, I mean, but we're certainly a big economic driver.
Well, we're certainly one of the 20 largest businesses or employers in Niagara too. So I mean, on that level we are. But if you think about it in terms of the fact that, and you know, Alan, you sit with a bunch of board members at our board meetings who have 50,000 people working for them, you know, towns worth of humans. We employ 600 people. That's a lot of folks. With the guild involved, it's almost 1,000 people. It feels like a lot of people, but when you look at the kind of economic impact, you were just about to go there, you know, we're close to $250 million a year of the Niagara economy, but we're only a $35 million business. So it's we leverage, and as a charity, we leverage a lot more than a normal commercial business does in terms of community impact. But that's, again, it's a different model, and we get thought of in the commercial world because we're a large employer. But in fact, the reason we do these things so well in terms of our economic impact and things is because we're not trying to make a profit. We're trying to break even and deliver a program that has community impact. So,
Yeah, I mean, and I know that, and appreciate the time that you've spent with all levels of government in terms of, this is an economic driver. It's an artistic enterprise, sure, but it is an economic driver. I mean, I think you had the ministerial telephone numbers on speed dial.
I do, actually.
Yeah, right. Well, there you go. I mean,
it's an interesting space. When I made a presentation to the Standing Committee on Finance last week, actually, for the province on this very thing. And, when you look at the live performing arts industry, it's the second highest GDP affected or industry in Canada in terms of what's happened to it because of COVID. Airlines and us, the live arts. Our industry in Ontario is worth about $2.5 billion, which is a big industry. But in actual fact, it leverages something like $13 billion in economic impact, which makes it bigger than energy, mines, and resources. So, when you start thinking about the fact that everybody who goes to a play goes out to dinner, drives a car, or takes transit, maybe stays over, probably goes shopping, like there's massive impact on that. More impact from live performing arts than live sports in Ontario, actually.
Okay, Cheryl, I don't know whether Ian has been able to join us. I don't see him. There he is. Ian, welcome. Well, maybe we can. We're at the 40-minute mark, and we said that we would go no longer than 45, Ian. So we're going to do a very quick introduction. Well, thank you very much for your time, and for those of you on today's call, let me introduce you to Ian Joseph. It's my very great pleasure to introduce Ian. He's the incoming chair of the board of directors. He's been involved in the show for a number of years, and you will recognize the name Paradigm Capital of the company that Ian is president, as a sponsor of the show, particularly the Jackie Maxwell Studio Theatre. So thank you for joining us, Ian.
Thank you, Alan.
And when all I'd ask Ian is, and I wish we were doing this as we had originally planned, a face-to-face congregate session. You would have received at this stage a very warm round of applause from the Girl volunteers. But take this as a virtual round of applause.
Thank you.
And all I'd simply ask you to do, Ian, is introduce yourself to the Guild members on the call and those who will watch this as a recorded event.
Yeah, well, thank you, Alan. As you said, I've been associated in one way or another with the Show Festival for a number of years. It was initially through my partner, John Warwick, who was on the board of the show for many years as well. And as a result, Paradigm became a sponsor of productions at the show, primarily at what is now the Jackie Maxwell Theatre. And the show always served for us as a reminder of the importance of what goes on in the world outside of our business. But in a way, it was something that I always came back to the firm from the show and said, here's a pretty complex organization managing risk in an most admirable way. And so there was, I thought, great benefit to both organizations by our association. So my initial contact was simply as a representative of Paradigm. I was then invited to join the board, which I did, and which has been an amazing experience for me. Amazing in several ways. One, I've associated with remarkable people on the board. And probably more importantly for me on a personal level, I've got to know people like TC and Tim, who I admire greatly and who I've come to count as friends as well. So the organization is terrific. It's enriched our lives, and I speak to my wife on that on that score as well. And I've met a lot of people outside of the actual ensemble and management, and some on the Guild, and all those interactions have been most enjoyable, and I look forward to more.
Good. As do we, and I look forward to a time when we can actually meet with you face to face. What interests me most as well, Ian, is the fact that you said that you will be always a rapt member of the audience, which, you know, I think that all of us, you know, that are associated in our various roles at with Shaw, we never lose the kind of the magic of actually being in live theatre. We might have management roles and organizational roles, but when we get to watch a play on stage, it's fantastic. It's a reward that you know, we miss terribly, obviously. So
Yeah, I mean, there's great inspiration derived from attending a live performance, and the Shaw. I remember probably the first time I met TC, he was addressing us on the board, and he said he wanted and he thought it could be the Shaw, the best theater company in the world, and everything that goes on at a performance suggests that, you know, the rigor of preparation, the execution by artists who are so good at what they do, it leaves us all inspired. So I look forward to everyone, and yes, I'm always a rapt member of that audience, and it's amazing how many times we leave a performance and we end up talking about it for days and days afterwards. So most inspiring.
well, and you've given back, particularly to TC. I mean, if I'm allowed, you know, a kind of a personal ad, his form on the cricket field improved remarkably when you showed up at the other end. So
he doesn't take direction very well, unfortunately, but it helps when I'm out there in the middle with him, and then the exchanges are a little more receptive.
My fellow guild members who aren't cricket fans, and I counsel you to join in the festivities wherever we have them this year.
I'll add one thing, though, that TC and I actually did open the batting for our team, and we've made a very good partnership with her.
Yeah, I was just going to say, though, that was in marked contrast to his performance the previous year, but we'll gloss over that very quickly. Right.
So, do you mean the previous year when I made an unbeaten 50 and was man of the match?
Yeah, but there are ways of making 50, TC. With Ian.
I would point out that the artistic director and board chair of the opposition are not generally playing at all. So let's just, you know.
True.
Well,
that's usually been left to the executive directors to sit on the sidelines and watch.
But let's be honest, a very flexible form of cricket that's played. Again, I apologize to my guild colleagues.
Wow, you're doubling down, Walker. You and I are going to have words.
In all my time in the guild, I have tried to explain to people that this is the social event of the year where a cricket match or a form of cricket breaks out, and I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we're here to explain. It's all the better for it, TC. So you're assuming that I'm criticizing. I am not. So
well, I can tell you that Ian brings a level of class and professionalism and style to the cricket pitch, which enables us all to feel like we're playing a real game of cricket.
Yes, right.
Thank you. It's my passion.
Okay, well, I feel a little bit chastised, and probably just as well. But
you ain't seen nothing yet.
Okay, no, I think it's time to say goodbye. I thank you all. I see. Hang on, we've got one more. We've got a comment. Okay. Thank you. It's from Betty DeSarah. Thank you, Alan, TC, Tim, and Ian for your good work. Cheers to a great Celebrate 60 season. And I think that's a great way to end our call today. And again, on behalf of my colleagues in the Guild, thank you to you all. Looking forward to working with you, Ian, as the new incoming chair. And I wish you all the best in that role as well. And looking forward to seeing a fantastic season. Certainly promises to be that way. Thank you all who are on the call. Again, if you have any questions and observations that you didn't have the opportunity to make in our time today, send them to me and I'll get back to you in due course. Anyway, until we meet again, thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you all for all your work, guys.
Thanks for everything, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.